Do the guides say we're going to make it through these times?
Humanity is at a time of reckoning, and a reckoning is a facing of oneself and all of one's creations, and everything that's been created in fear needs to be reknown in a higher way. We have been inured or entrenched or living in a world where fear is prevalent to the extent that we don't even think about it. It's present and informing everything. Recently, they've begun using the metaphor of imagine you're having a lovely dinner party in a room where there's a painting of horrible violence on the wall. Now, that violence, you may not be looking at the painting, but it is informing your entire experience of everything. It can't help but do that. The guides have said for a long time that you build these bombs in the belief that they're keeping you safe, and eventually one will go off. That's what they're meant to do. And that we have a choice here.
Are you ready to shine? Shine bright. Woo-hoo! Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered why the world feels like it's falling apart and pray it's falling together, then do we have a World Made New show for you. Today, I'll be talking with Paul Selig, my all-time favorite spiritual author, channel, medium, and guide, about his latest channeled work, A World Made New, and what it means for all of us as we head into uncharted times. So welcome back to the show, Paul. Are you ready to shine?
I'm ready. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for being here. And a mighty woohoo!
And woohoo to you.
Thank you. Well, someday I will get a big woohoo out of you. I know it's coming, Paul. We've only been together, 10 times. I know it's coming one of these days. So before we dive right into things, Paul, do the guides say we're going to make it through these times?
Yeah, they do, and they have, and they've consistently said we have made a choice at a collective level to move beyond the chaos of separation that we've been, moored in for a very, very, very long time.
And the word chaos is interesting. I'm going to double back to that in a minute. Do they say we're in for or in the middle of a massive shift?
They do say that, yeah. I mean, they've been saying that since they started dictating books through me, that was 2009 was the first dictation of a book. And they said at that time, humanity is at a time of reckoning, and a reckoning is a facing of oneself and all of one's creations, and everything that's been created in fear needs to be reknown in a higher way. And that's still what they're teaching. So I do understand that we're in it. I don't know how deep in it we are and when the end of it is, but I do hear that this is productive. And whenever I hear productive, it generally means it's not a lot of fun, but it's highly useful or essential. And I think we're in a productive time.
Have we then chosen to manifest in a productive lifetime?
I think it depends on, I suspect if you were speaking to somebody during the Black Plague, they would have said it was pretty hard. And, there have been a lot of hard times, really. And I think we tend to think of ourselves through our little windows of specialness. But, I think the big difference at this time is that we actually have the capacity to blow ourselves to kingdom come, which we didn't have, 100 years ago. And I think the guides have said for a long time that you build these bombs in the belief that they're keeping you safe, and eventually one will go off. That's what they're meant to do. And that we have a choice here. And if we want to live through that kind of thing, we can. But they've said repeatedly that humanity has chosen to make it. I don't remember what the exact quote is, but they've said it many different ways over the last few years. And that the collective soul of humanity, the collective idea of who we are as a species, has elected to move beyond separation, really, which they say is the challenge that we've been facing for a very long time.
Thank you. I'm going to double back to both of those things. I want to go to the title of your book, because I believe they give you the title, and they give you the title but while you're finishing the channeling for a previous book. Why did they call it A World Made New?
I'd have to ask them. I don't know why they chose the title. I think that is what the book is about. I think it's an apt title for the teaching. One of the claims of truth or attunements that they work with is the claim, behold, I make all things new, which they said is claimed by the divine self or the true self from what they call the upper room, which they say is Christ consciousness, or the level of vibration above the common field or the octave that we know of as reality. And they say everything is in octaves. So you go to the upper room, you're simply being transposed to a level of vibration that operates in a higher way. They say from that place, a world is made new, not from the common field, not through the effort of industry as we have known it, which tends to result in more and more conflict, but from a level of consciousness that operates in a different way. So I don't know, is it too early for me to channel what we'll say? They're saying we will say it, a world made new. A world made new is actually a paradigm for expression, as the divine self, that through its presence, that through its presence and being manifests a higher octave of expression, experience, and behaving, underline behaving. When you actually know who you are, you stop harming one another, you actually stop harming one another, fighting over land, seeking to accrue wealth, when indeed you know who you are, when indeed you know who you are, what you build, what you erect, what you erect is born without the seed of fear, or competition, or the dominant, or the denial of the divine, which is your only real issue, period. And they're saying period.
Yes, thank you to the guides, which means the only real issue is that feeling of separation for the divine. They're not realizing that we are divine. What is that they're saying?
Well, I mean, they're already 2/3 of the way, I think, through another book, which they began last month in a retreat in Italy, and I hope they're going to be finishing a retreat that's coming up soon. They've long said that denial of the divine is the only real problem that we face, and we've been operating in this misunderstanding that we're separate from one another or separate from source for a very long time. Consequently, our memories, our idea of what was, our entire idea of history, and consequently how we have chosen, is born in this belief in separation. So they're teaching union now. They call it divine union. That's the title of the book they're dictating now. It's extraordinary. I'm trying to get behind it. And a world made new, which they say is the culmination of the 12 texts that they've dictated thus far, is the foundation for where they're going now, which is, the realization of who we are in oneness with the source of all things. So a world made new is actually the expression of the divine self as made manifest in reality, because we're always operating in co-resonance. And when we stop aligning to the lower, born in a history and legacy of separation, we start claiming the new.
I love it. Watching a beautiful movie. I'm not sure if The Martian. The Martian is about an astronaut who's stranded on Mars. And will he be able to get home? And it took a coming together of specifically China and America. Spoiler alert, everybody. Please feel free to go ahead. It took basically a world coming together as one to be able to bring him home. Is that you're saying you're trying to get behind this? Is that what they're talking about? Is us a reunification with the divine, with the monad, with the Christed nature of our true consciousness? Or is it more than that and a reunification of all of humanity?
I think it's both. I think the latter is the result of the first thing that you said. So when the guides say, when you know who you are and knowing is realizing, you truly know who you are, you know who everybody else is as well. You can't deny it. And, we're used to operating through this idea of the personality structure. This is who I am, and this is what I do for a living, and this is where I was born, and how old I am, and what I believe, and how I vote, and all those things. And these are ways we experience ourselves while in a body and in a lifetime, but it's not who we truly are. So the divine self, which they say, or the eternal self, or they call it the Christed self, it doesn't really matter, I think, to them at all what we call it. That's the aspect of us that actually already knows this, and they say is already in union. So what they do is they lift us or their students to what they call the upper room, which is the next level of vibration. And they say that is the abode of the divine self. That's where the true self expresses. And then they bring the rest of us there as they can, or they support us at a level of alignment where we're not reenacting the old historical data born in separation. And from that level, everything begins to shift. I mean, I say it and I get it, and I've been so inundated with these teachings for a while, but a part of me still goes, well, make it simple. It actually really is simple. You know, it just means what level of vibration are we coming from and creating from? The aspect of us that knows ourselves in separation is going to perpetuate that. That's all we've known. The aspect of us that knows beyond that can claim a world made new.
Thank you. So forgive me for this question, because there's a human tendency to, well, I'm a level 4 upper room, I'm a level 5 upper room. We're not talking about levels. We're talking just getting to this changed, more reunified state.
Yeah, they've never said level 1. I mean, you know, they've never said that in their lives. It's not in their lives. I mean, they have. They've never said that through me. You know, once when I with somebody in a workshop said, "Can't your guides give certificates out at the end of the workshop saying like level 1, level 2?" And the guides were like, "Whoa, this is, you know, you were divine when you got here. You want a certificate telling you what you already are." I mean, it's really we're just claiming our innate nature. So I think it's about moving. This is what they say. We have been inured or entrenched or living in a world where fear is prevalent to the extent that we don't even think about it. It's present and informing everything. Recently, they've begun using the metaphor of, imagine you're having a lovely dinner party in a room where there's a painting of horrible violence on the wall. Now, that violence, you may not be looking at the painting, but it is informing your entire experience of everything. It can't help but do that. And that's kind of the world we live in. They say it's a little bit like you're swimming in a pool that somebody peed in before you got into, and it's what you're used to. They say that when you go to the level of alignment of the upper room, you're not claiming fear. Fear doesn't operate at that level. If you want the fear, you can have it, but it's a creation of the lower. So you lift to the upper room, and when the guides do this with people, and they do it in their workshops, they used to say, bring everybody to the upper room, and you can feel it's a palpable shift in the energy in the body and the energetic field in the whole room. You're in a whole room, people go whoosh. And they say, and what are you afraid of? And people are like, what? They don't have anything. You have to go back down to the other level of separation to sort of have that experience. It's available if you want it. We can learn through that. We have. What I think we've been taught to believe that fear is our ally, our companion, or that we need it. And the guides aren't talking about self-preservation. They know that's not fear. So if the sign says sharks in the water, maybe best not to swim that day. That doesn't mean you have to be afraid of the water. Do you understand?
And I've swam near you where you live, Paul, on Paia Beach, where there are sharks in the water. And you say your prayers, your blessings, you get in, you send love, and either you choose to swim or you don't. And the only person I ever know to be bit there was a guy who got the nickname Sharky because he brought bloody chum into the water with him. And thankfully, even he was still all right. If you don't stay in that state of fear, be prudent. And we've discussed this before. You look both ways, but it radically shifts the outlook of everything. In fact, I want to go there. I want to go to a few quotes from your book here, and then I want to talk about how we can be attuned or get in alignment today. They say in the book, and you don't have to remember any of the words, you just channel them, so it's not necessary. But they say, talking about rapid change, this is from the guides, in what you would call 10 years, much of what you would worry about today will not be present to worry about. I am loving that specifically because there are a lot of discussions of change, and they do talk about political upheaval. They do talk about economic upheaval, but they say a lot of the things you worry about, and I'd love to hear what you're hearing about this, what you're worried about today will not be present in the future.
I have no idea of the quote. I don't remember where it is in the book.
Not necessary.
It actually probably is necessary up to a point, because I'm certain that they were saying that in response to something that they were teaching that was fairly specific. So it's kind of like unpacking the idea of a first date to somebody who's never been on a date or somebody that's been married 6 times? Do you understand? The answer will be reframed. I'll go to them and see if they want to take this on. We would like to. They're saying we would like to. It's actually true, and it's actually true. What you aspire to be, what you aspire to be is still based in a system, is still based in a system of separation of separation. What you think you should be, what you think you should be is better than you are, is better than you are. You think you're less than already, or you think you are less than already, and that has never been true, and that has never been true. The realization of humanity at a higher level of tone, which means agreement to a manifest world. To a manifest world is not only beginning, it is underway. It is underway. You understand 10 years. You understand 10 years as an idea of time, and we'll use the idea of time here. We will use the idea of time here illustratively, if we are allowed to, the mechanisms of control that you've all been in honor of, that you have all been in honor of, which means in agreement to, are beginning to shift how the world should be run, how people should be treated, how people should be treated, who should win, who should lose, who should win and who should lose, are all based in archaic models of separation of separation. The generations that are coming now are actually being born into an agreement of something far better, You might say different, or you might say different. It's not equality as you think it should be. It's not equality as you think it should be. It's equality as it really is. It's equality as it truly is. There is no human life. There is no human life that is more worthy than the next, and is more worthy than the next, and there is not one people, and there is not one people who should be in rulership of any other. The realization of the structure of abiding, that the structures that you abide in have been born in fear, or greed, and a need for control, are being relinquished now, in a steady pattern. You are looking right now at the affect of past choice, the amount of separation, the amount of hatred, the amount of hatred, the legacy of hatred, and the legacy of hatred has to be seen, to be shifted. You've been in denial. You have been in denial about your own complicit natures, to the very structures we discussed. I am not greedy, but why should I give them $1? But why should I give that man $1? I am not special, but I am certainly better than she is, but I am certainly better than she is. I am not of these people, I could never be, You are your brother's keeper, You're also your brother, at a higher level of tone, You are unique expressions, yes, but you are beginning to understand the reliance on separation, to create division, in a way that is not only harmful, but is murderous. Finally, you are seeing one and all, that you're actually complicit, which means in alignment to these structures, Now we must all understand this. You must all understand this. You're in accord. You are in accord. ACCORD, with everything you see, and can experience, including all possibility, You are in accord now. You are in accord now to a world in division, which simply means that you're engaged with it. You are in an engagement with it, or coherence, alignment to that. When your alignment shifts, when you claim the higher, and it becomes your expression, the old begins to fall away. Because you can hold it, because there is nothing to hold. It is indeed a mass shift. It is not one political ideology, but it is not one political ideology, or one religion, It's a human awareness. It's a human awareness of commonality, and the sacred, Call it God if you want to. It matters not. But this awareness is what claims all things new, and that is the teaching we bring. Indeed, is occurring. It is occurring. Will continue to do, and will continue to, in a steady pace. Period. They're saying period.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Guy. So the term that there's a lot to unpack there, but the term complicit and accord. We are complicit and in accord with what is going on. So how do we become, complicit and in accord with a new world or a new reality?
You lift in consciousness to a level of vibration where the old is not. And this is me, and I shouldn't be saying this, but like they're saying, we would like to say it. You align to the higher, you align to the higher, and by aligning to the higher, you're actually complicit. You're actually complicit, or in accord to what expresses at that level. Understand that. Understand that. The view from the basement window. The view from the basement window is of the feet on the sidewalk. Is of the feet on the sidewalk from the 50th floor. From the 50th floor, you are seeing the clouds roll by. You are seeing the clouds roll by. We're not denying the feet on the pavement. We are not denying the feet on the pavement. But it's a very small view of the world, but it's a very small view of the world. What you create in the higher, reflects the clouds, reflects the potential, reflects the potential of the new. Now what you wish to do is move to the floor, move to the 50th floor and drag the debris of the old up there with you. It cannot happen that way. You don't bring your old pain. You don't bring your old pain, your old legacy of fear. You release it on the way up. You release it on the way up. We are not speaking about denying them. We are not speaking about denying them or bypassing them. You are accountable to your creations. You are accountable to all of your creations. You personally, you collectively. That includes war, and that includes war. That includes famine. That includes murder. That includes murder of any kind. Your reliance upon the old. Because it was always there. Because it was there, it should always be there. Is the way that you support these edicts. There's always been a war. There has always been a war. We will always have a war. Until you live to the level of consciousness where war is not an option. We'll continue killing each other. You will continue killing each other for profit, or for land, or for some reason, that is not true. That is not true, period.
Thank you, and thank you to the guides. I'm going to go two directions. I want to talk about how we can lift up, but before we do that, we had another very important word, which is accountable or accountability. How do we both be accountable to the past and not be making the past anew?
I mean, I'm going to try this one because I don't know that I can channel for 90 minutes on one cup of coffee, and that's all I've got here. But they'll hopefully shut me up if I start to answer wrong. So ask me the question again.
Yes, the term accountable. How do we both be accountable to the past and not make the past anew by placing our awareness, attention, and vibration in the
Nothing gets
past?
healed until it's seen. It's not about pretending that it didn't happen. You don't pretend that we don't have a country, built on a legacy of slavery. It happened. It was a real thing. We don't pretend that we've solved all the problems that were born at that time. We're actually accountable collectively to our creations. The accountability is the realization of what was and then choosing the higher, not replicating the old. Now, the guides have said again and again and again, the personality self knows itself entirely through historical data. All of it. Everything that I know is based on my generational agreements, what it was like to be born in my era. When I was a kid, there was no internet. It was a very different thing. My ethnicity, my cultural heritage and background, whatever, all this stuff is informing all of my choices. It's not to deny those things, but they do inform how I see the world. It's a frame. You understand this? So I'd say we're all walking around with these little frames that we're holding. So if my frame is everybody's got to be out for themselves or me first, I'm going to continue to call into manifestation what expresses at that level. We're always getting at a certain level what we expect. I do have to understand that that is what I am doing in order to choose the other, in order for that to fall away. So I think the process of becoming aware, which is, I think, where we have been unavoidably, culturally and as a world, is upon us now. We can't pretend it's not happening. We can see things as they happen in all parts of the world. This was not the case historically. So how do we understand what we're accountable to? I asked this question when they first brought this idea up, which was in a book called, I think it was the Book of Mastery, which was maybe or a long book ago. And I said, because I think I interrupted the teaching, And so my question was, so if there's a book on a table in Paris, I am in accord to that book on the table in Paris? And they said, the moment you know that there's a book on the table in Paris, you're holding it in consciousness, and yes, how you hold that book in consciousness informs the reality or the manifestation of the book. I mean, think of it this way. Well, that's a good watch and that's a crappy watch. Well, the good watch, they both keep time, but the good watch was made by somebody. I have fireworks going on. Is that a symbol of my gesture? I've never had that happen.
Paul, I've got to, if you can bookmark that. I'm cracking up because the guides are playing with me while you're talking, not just for the fireworks, but you said a book in Paris. This laptop that I'm on is held up by a book called Paris Mon Amour. It is held up by a book on Paris.
That hasn't happened since the first book was being dictated. Was doing that on CD discs, a CD recorder, and I have to stick the little blank CD into the computer, and it would try to find a title for the blank CD, which didn't exist. But once they did a lecture about stepping off a ladder into the sunlight or something like that, and the graphic that they gave me was somebody stepping off a ladder. And then they gave me a lecture by Emmett Fox, who's one of the only spiritual teachers I ever read. They tried to label an Emmett Fox lecture I never heard of from like New York in 1923. I'm like, oh my God, this is nuts. So anyway, it's happened before. But I don't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, the book on the table in Paris. So the moment we'll do the two watches, the good watch and the bad watch. It's because we endow things with meaning, and the meaning is endowed through history. What makes a good watch? What makes a good man? What makes an evil man? These ideas are born in a legacy that is quite old and may not even be accurate, truthfully. So when we're always getting what we expect, and we're replicating what we've been taught, know it or not. The guides have said that until we come to a level of consciousness collectively where we don't align to war or don't agree to it, an agreement is coherence, we're probably going to have it. They said, we've been at war since somebody picked up the first rock and threw it at their neighbor. Way, way, way back when. There you go.
I'm holding a rock.
There you go. Don't throw it at me. It's really,
I only want to give you a hug, Paul. So no, there'll be no rock throwing today. As I'm seeing these happen, and as I'm seeing these synchronicities here, to me, the only word that can possibly come to mind, and that's where we get to shift. There are so many dances we'll do here today, is alignment. What they're talking about is aligning to a higher level, aligning to a higher room, aligning to that Christic consciousness. How do we begin to do that?
I know how the guides teach it. I'm sure there are many ways forward. I know what they've taught through me. I can't say that I've done it. I will say recently, and really recently, and since this last round of dictation and retreats, I've been experiencing it in a very different way than I have in the past. I'm a little astonished by it. But the guides teach, and have been teaching since the very beginning, I suspect it's a system of alignment through attunement. And the attunements are spoken, and the guides say the spoken words that they offer are encoded with vibration. And there's generally a palpable experience and often physical phenomena associated with them. When the first book was published, and nobody knew who I was, and the guide said this is a book that's going to be experienced more so than read. It's basically an energetic conversation with the reader. Reviews started coming in, and people saying, I'm reading this book and my body's vibrating. I'm reading this book and I'm seeing auras. And all that was going on and on and on. It's always been the case with this stuff. So they've brought through a series of attunements that support us in this. These aren't magic words. I guess you could say that they're incantations, but they do seem to claim an energetic equivalency. And the guides talk about them as notes on a piano being played. Each attunement is as a note on a piano. When all of the notes are played in simultaneity, they make a chord. And that's the metaphor that they've been using since before I even understood the notes, to be in accord. We're always in accord to what we see. Everything that you can see when you look around you are in vibrational accord to, like it or not, And it's why the guides sometimes say you don't get to be a victim, and a master at the same time. It doesn't mean that I created the war or I created the illness or the hard thing. I don't hear it that way. It does mean that we are in vibrational alignment to it, and some of that alignment is collective. We're in a collective agreement to how things operate. I used to say, somebody would say, well, why did I create my cancer? And I go, I don't know that you created your cancer, and I don't actually go there. But I do say sometimes, but if you're living in a town where they've been dumping pollution into the well water, and people are getting sick, you collectively are in accord to a world where people are allowed to do that. Still, that's a collective thing, So I don't know if this is making sense, but I understand the entire teaching now as a teaching of supporting us and aligning to a level of vibration where we're not claiming or replicating the old through a predisposition to the old menu. This is what we were allowed and this is all we can have, which is all we've known, really. But moving to a level where we're becoming willing to receive what is already there and has been there. It's not about getting a damn vision board out and making things happen. It's not about controlling everything. It really is about moving to a level of tone where you understand or recognize or realize, which is the better word. And again, this is me. I'm gonna let them jump in and correct everything I said if they want to. But where source, whatever you want to call that, is available. I find more and more in my life now that what I need is actually provided. And I am not somebody, I went to a good school, I did those things, but I also was next to homeless for a number of years in my life, and I had enormous psychic pain. And worked through a lot and learned a lot through that. I don't want to have to go through it again, but I'm not announcing that from, some, isn't this nice, I get whatever I want. It was, I know what it's like to learn to trust or to learn to have some kind of faith, because I had nothing else in those years. It was my late 20s. They were hard.
Did you have faith at that point as you're near homeless that things are going to turn around?
Mostly I did, yeah. I stayed alive through it. I mean, I'm sure I've told you this story, but I was on the brink of an extraordinarily promising career, which I kind of brought down on my head through old pain, but playing out as drug and alcohol abuse. And I was an atheist.
And I didn't know this story. What was the career that was? No.
I was going to be a playwright. Yeah, I was a year out of Yale. I was being produced in New York and London. I was profiled in Interview magazine, with my platinum blonde Billy Idol hair. And, and having these expectations of myself that were somewhat based in merit. I was quite talented, but I was very self-destructive and very lost. And in 1986, I got out of graduate school and my career was happening and I was getting addicted to coke quickly. And I'd been a lush for years, I was a very sweet drunk, but I was a bit of a drunk. And I was beginning to realize that it was out of control. My family had thrown me out. I was living in somebody's guest room. A beautiful place, but I was taken in by somebody because I had no place to go. And I was working on an opera in Minnesota, and I was billeted at the Gopher Campus Motor Lodge in Minneapolis or St. Paul. And I didn't know where the drugs were in St. Paul, Minneapolis. And I was having a very bad night. And the Gideons leave little Bibles in drawers of hotel rooms. And for some reason, I took it out and it said, "Prayer for People in Crisis." And I don't know that I could have named the crisis as addiction at that point. I think it was much larger than that. There was a pain that I had known most of my life that wasn't going away. And I knew that it wasn't going away. And I knew that it might not. And I said the prayer and I meant it. And 3 days later, I was back in New York. And I think I know I had spent my last dollar on a glass of wine in the late morning after having been out all night. And I went home and I went to sleep into my little guest room that I was staying in. And the next morning I woke up and I said, "What can I do for myself today that's positive?" And I heard a voice, which was the first voice, and it told me what to do. And I actually, 37 years later, I've never had a drink or a drug. I mean, that's what happened. So something happened that shook my foundation. And a few months later, I had that experience on the roof that I've talked about on a number of podcasts, which, I heard this harmonic convergence was coming, people are going to be waking up, and I was beginning to think that there was a God. And I thought, well, if there is a God, and you ask to be woken up, why would it want to say no? So I asked, and something happened, which was energetic. But my life was falling apart. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic. I'm a gay guy. Most of my friends seemed to be dying, and quickly. I was healthy, which was a miracle, but I didn't know that at the time. I just thought everyone was going to die. I had no money. I couldn't write, which was the work I was expected to do. And
Was that because you had gotten sober, you couldn't write?
I don't know what it was. I think I was having problems before I stopped too. It was a pain. It had become very painful. And I didn't know what I was doing, although I spent a lot of money on school to learn. I don't know that I did. I became a very good teacher of writing, though, which is how I supported myself for many years. I was really good. But I also went through this very interesting thing that lasted for a few years, where I don't know that I really knew who I was anymore. I really didn't know. I remember, because I always wore black, I was, of the Lou Reed school of fashion, and suddenly I didn't want to wear black. I didn't know what to wear, And I went to the Gap. I had money enough once finally to go buy some clothes. I went to the Gap, and I was so used to monochrome, I bought everything in brown. And I went into some 12-step meeting, and somebody said, "Paul, my dear, you look like a giant turd." And I did. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know, I didn't know. And it wasn't just me. That was common. I used to see that. There was some biker chick who showed up, and a month later, she looked like she just came off an Amish farm with a bonnet and a long dress. It's like we were all trying to find out who the hell we were without the way we had been. And, I wear black now all the time still. It's what I like. It's comfortable for me. However, that long period of not knowing was deeply, deeply, deeply infused with a spiritual longing, which I hadn't even known was there, because I had been raised in a household where you kind of believed that only stupid people believed in these things. And suddenly I was having permission to believe, and I was given enough evidence early on, just enough evidence to keep me with it. And maybe it was because it was such a crazy time. I was out of school for the first time, self-supporting for the first time, not drunk for the first time, and watching people my age dying in a matter of months all around me. It was in some ways a perfect storm. But for whatever reasons, I studied energy healing at that time, and shortly thereafter, as a way of getting context, because I was opening up as a clairvoyant and not knowing what the hell that meant. And that's when the clairaudience started, and I was working with people, and I could hear things for them, and that led to the channeling. So in some ways, it was a whole kind of weird deliverance into another life, but it was not for the faint of heart. I will say that. I don't recommend it as a path, but it was mine, and I accept it. And occasionally I meet people that say, "Oh, I woke up, I had a spiritual awakening. I know the world is, I'm channeling the angels now." Oh, great, if that's how it didn't happen for me that way. I sometimes say my spiritual awakening was like going through the windshield of a car and finding yourself on the side of a road where you don't know how to read the damn signs, and it's dark. And I had to keep walking and walking and walking in some faith that the light was going to come up again, and it did. And I'm very, very grateful. I have a life now that I would not have anticipated having. I have community, I have friends, I have work that I care about. I'm self-supporting in a nice way, and I taught college for many years, and that was a good life too. But this is a life I could not have anticipated, and I would not have known. And you know why? It wasn't on the menu for what I thought I was allowed. Anyway, that was a long digression, but now you know the story.
Thank you, Paul. No, that wasn't the digression. That was the heart of this talk, and that is the heart of Paul. So I can't thank you enough for sharing. And there's so many key lessons for people. For instance, again, going back to this movie Martian earlier today, this guy who survives at the end is now teaching other astronauts. And he said, I thought I was going to die every day. I thought I was going to die every day. And all I did is try to determine the one next best step.
That's still how I live, really. It's still kind of it. I mean, you do what's in front of you and you do it as best you can with integrity and honor without harming others. And, I do my best. I am not perfect and I am certainly not enlightened. I don't know what that means really. I think it was an aspiration at one point, but I don't know that it is now. But I will say, and it was early on, interesting to say this, I don't know if I've told you this one, but I was studying healing with this woman. I was in my early 30s, and she was a powerhouse, this lady. She's no longer with it. To my mind, she was a big, big deal. I think I gave her far too much power. But in one of her classes, she said, okay, I'm gonna give you this little prayer now, and it's gonna come true. Use it carefully, write it down, be careful, but basically be careful what you ask for. And I trusted her and I did it. I've done it like 3 times in my life, and every time I think it's worked, really. Usually at a cost. I understand the carefulness behind it now. But the first time I heard it, I wrote down, and I don't know the exact language, but I had known enough that there was something more, but I couldn't pretend it didn't exist. And I wrote stupidly, perhaps, I would like to go all the way with this. I don't know what I would have asked for if I'd known. But sometimes I actually think that the books that come through me were the answer to that prayer. If not for me, maybe for somebody else. Because they are a way.
Thank you. So I want to fast forward. I want to stay with Paul rather than with the guides for a minute, because I mean, I've known you for a very long time. I've watched your transformation. We've talked about it. I probably embarrass you, forgive me, when I talk about it so much, but it's just fascinating to watch. But you said that right now, you said how I've been experiencing the world recently. Can you share about that?
I don't know how to describe it yet. And I almost kind of don't want to, because I don't want to diminish it. And I'm not saying it's extraordinary like those fireworks that went off at all. I had this experience first. I do a retreat on Maui in the spring, and the guides started speaking about God beyond the idea of God that we've held, which they say is still basically moored in a belief in separation. And they started talking about God being the it that is all things. And I had an experience of that, which was a little like what this is now. It's just being. And everything just is, without the values and the history and the language that was attached to it, which makes this more important than that. It just is. And I find it, and I don't know that this is going to last. I've had these experiences before. I think, oh my God, I've arrived, only to find out that this is what I needed to get through the next round of growth. Like I'm given a little stay on the beach to bask in the sun before the tide drags me out again for more change. And I expect it may well be that. But I have to say, I think finally, I came back from this last retreat in North Carolina, and the guides were dictating this book on divine union with a real awareness of how well and deeply I have been cared for, and in a way that I did not get, because I am of the predisposition, that the other shoe is about to drop at all times. And I'm not feeling that right now. And with it comes real peace. That's all I can say.
Yes, I believe at some point, I'm going to say the other shoe will rise and Paul will only grow more into Paul and more into Paul.
Yeah, it's possible. Probable, I suppose. I don't know what this is right now. I'm just enjoying it. I was also trying, and will continue, I have to go back to it soon, to write a memoir about my experience. Well, maybe. And I started into that in January, and then I pulled back from it right before I went on tour a couple of months ago, where they immediately started dictating their own books. So that became my nice excuse not to have to look at my life more. But I think I've been having an opportunity to reflect on what I've been through and to understand how I still tend to frame those things as, there are days I go, what the hell was I thinking? I could have just been a playwright and been happy and had a nice apartment, and here I am living in the damn rainforest, where I'll never get a date, and I still don't drive, I have my learner's permit now for 2 freaking years. I still don't have my license.
Did you say it was the merge? Was it the merge that's difficult, or what was the challenging part?
I don't know, it wasn't merge. I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Because I was talking with Jessica about this recently, specifically about you, forgive me. And you said that it's not the twist and turns on the road to Hana. It was something else that was getting you.
Oh, the toads? No, the toads. My dog licked a toad. She went on a trip. That was a mess. That was not fun. Poor Lily. No, I'm not. I'm a reluctant driver. I was a New Yorker my whole life. You don't need a car there. And I moved here in 2020, and then I got my house maybe a year later. And then I got a car, and then I took lessons, and I took lessons, and I took lessons. And I failed the test 3 times now. And anyway, that's the big challenge, because I think a part of me doesn't want to be responsible for that. But, it's easy. Things that are very easy for other people, like driving and cooking, I'm challenged by things that seem impossible, like stepping into other people and reading their minds. That's pretty easy for me for some reason. It's sort of like breathing, but it's just what it's like to be Paul some days.
Well, we love you just as you are. So let's dive into attunements for a minute. And I'm wondering, what is the because they keep on giving you the latest attunement. What attunement comes out of your latest book that is most appropriate for people today?
From a world made new? Let me ask. They're saying the teaching is a whole teaching. The attunements support each person. The attunements support each person in realizing the teaching and realizing the teaching, or the methodology we use, or the methodology we use to support people actually in their own actualization. I know who I am in truth. It's the very simple one. It's the very simple one. The aspect that really knows. The aspect of you that truly knows already abides in the upper room, or at a higher level of tone. It's not I know who I am. It is not I know who I am in my career, in my calling, in my ethnicity, in my gender identification, my nationality, in my nationality. I know who I am. I know who I am as of source, an expression of God, an expression of God. Now the monad as you, or the divine self within you, or the divine self within you is what makes that claim, I know who I am. I know who I am in truth, which means beyond any idea, misidentification, inclusive of form or history. I know who I am. I know who I am as of the eternal now, an expression of God by any name you wish, an expression of support, at an expression in support of the awakening of others, and the awakening of others through my presence and being, through my presence and being. When you know who you are, when you know who you are, you know who another is, you know who another is, when you know who another is, they are supported in their own awakening, in their own awakening to their true nature, not through what you say, not through what you say, but through the co-resonant, but through the co-resonant field. You're awakening others through presence and being, period. And they're saying period.
Thank you. I want to go from there to one other, and then I want to go into a little bit of free will, or even free will, Paul. This one seems, when you talk about, I'm not going to get it in your words, please forgive me. This experience, I'm going to call it sweet spot, where you're at right now, where things do take care of themselves. And I've watched that since you were in Costa Rica, going, hello, can't come back to New York City. And instead, one beautiful thing, and I'm sure there are punctuation marks of holy crap in this, but one beautiful thing from an outsider perspective took place after another to another to another, as a new world for Paul began to unfold. The attunement that seems appropriate here for that is God is, God is, God is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the attunement that ends the first series of them. They've moved beyond it, truthfully, in their teachings, and it's what they're teaching now, so I'm probably going to get it wrong if I try to describe it, because I'm not used to it yet. But they say the challenge with the concept of God for most of us is it's informed by the relics of history: a wrathful God, a loving God, a female God, a male God, all of these ideas of God by names that they've been given throughout time. And now they're speaking of the God that expresses beyond all ideas of God, which they say is simply it. It is, it is, it is. God is, God is, God is. It is, it is, it is. The it is what's giving me the experience now. Because I'm not trying to make the tree holy, it just simply is. And because it is, it must be of source, because nothing can be outside of it, if you think of it that way. The claim God is, God is, God is. The teachings go, behold, I make all things new, it will be so, God is, God is, God is. My understanding, if I'm right with this, is the claim, behold, I make all things new, which is claimed from the octave of vibration they call the upper room, which again can be experienced. It's not like you're not creating it. They're saying it's like a radio station. Like, we're on one radio station right now. All it takes to turn to the next station is a slight shift of the dial, and you can be elsewhere and calling in a new broadcast. And the upper room is at that.
Is there a way to tell you're in the upper room?
You can usually feel it, yeah. I mean, some of it for some people is more physical. One of the easiest ways is fear is an operative. You're just not experiencing it. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be worried. I can go right back downstairs if I want to. But behold, I make all things new. And what they say that is the divine self in its expression, reclaiming that which has been held in separation or in shadow. It's really simple. So they say you can't make anything holy, it already is, but you can deny the divine in anything, and mostly we have. So it's a claim of reclamation. Behold, I make all things new is the reseeing of the world, really. Matter, form, whatever, everything and anything in this level of consciousness. It will be so seems to claim it as manifest, and then God is, God is, God is the result. It becomes your experience of what you see and what you experience, which may be what I'm beginning to interpret as what's feeling so different now. It would be nice for that to be the case. I continue to show up for these dictations, even when I at times question it, and I often do. And I don't think it would be right if I didn't. But I have to say, they've said many, many times to their students and to me, and it's in their books, they say nothing that we have taught you, anything that we have said can happen has basically happened. It's available. But it is available at a level of experience. And they also say this, which I think is important, is that we can only hold so much at one time. So you don't want to be the light bulb that, puts too much voltage in before you can manage it. And some of that has to do with an acclimation to the higher that seems to happen both in the physical body and in the energetic bodies. And I do believe this is all sort of under the jurisdiction of the soul. And I think that there are things that we're here to learn regardless, and this doesn't take away our lessons. It may offer us the lessons in a different fashion than we might have had them otherwise. I suppose I could have never moved to where I live now and had a different experience of all of this from wherever I landed, which would have been another reality and perhaps better if I want to use equations, or just different. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did. And there's a couple of things that come up. One is the prayer that you asked earlier, which is similar to, I've had the experience of seeing me in, or at least believing I have seen me in a pre-birth around a council of elders. And I'm choosing to come back to earth. And I said, I want to learn as much as I can. Give me the works. And they said, almost like out of the movies, you can't handle the works. And I'm like, no, give me the works. And it sounds like when you're saying at what cost, you were in a sense asking for the same thing.
I guess, I don't know. I just had had enough of a taste of it and how remarkable the experience of it was. There's nothing to say. So, I was probably 29, maybe 30. I'd gone through a very dark patch. Really, I had a very loud head. In 12-step land, they call it the committee, but my committee was relentless, and I didn't sleep well for a couple of years. And I, again, prayed. Anyway, at the end of this little prayer fest I did of 3 days of prayer, simple prayer, say for 3 days, I woke up and the pain that I had been in was gone, and my head was quiet. And I was walking around New York, and I think I might have had like 45 cents to my name that week. I mean, it was like nothing in my pocket. But I remember walking around the city really knowing that I was right where I was supposed to be, and so was everybody else. And that just blew my mind. And it was an experience of being in the presence of Source, or in an awareness of some kind of dance that was just innately perfect. And it blew my mind, it really did. But I knew, and then I thought I had arrived. I thought, oh, this is it, I've arrived, this is it forever. And it lasted a few days, and then I wasn't there anymore, and I was despondent and felt abandoned and like I must have screwed something up or whatever. But I think that prayer came, maybe that desire came as a result of that. Because I thought, if this is real, it's all I want to know. That's all. Everything else pales, that's all.
I want to talk about, thank you, Paul. I want to talk about free will, but you just said the thing that was certainly a theme for me as I've gone along this path. I've finally, I don't know how many years ago, given this up, but I certainly owned that comment, screwed something up. How did you, well, first off, can anybody screw anything up, or is there nothing to be screwed up?
That's an interesting question. I tend to believe in free will. The guides have talked about free will. They also talk about aligning the will to the higher will, which is moving to, in the old days, in my early days with this stuff, and I used to think in terms of 12-step stuff, made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood God, which is the third step, and there's a prayer attached. But I think I initially thought my will was just bad, something bad, and I didn't want to act on anything, and I became quite passive for a time, and that changed. But I understand now that I was coming from a place of thy will, not mine be done, as if there was a polarity there, and that my will was not a good thing, and God's will, whatever the hell that was, and how the hell do you find out, was a good thing. And I think the idea of being one with then can become inclusive of will, which is the alignment of the will. The guides talk about it as they've talked about it before, as a braiding of the will. They say there's the personal will and the divine will. When they braid, they move to a unified state where they say the personal will is basically held in the higher. So do I believe in free will? I don't know if that was the question. Yeah, I do. Are there mistakes? If you wish to call them, they're saying if you wish to call them that, you may. You may. There are ways you learn. There are ways you learn that are not essential, but you may be choosing them. But you may be choosing them to realize you don't need to put your finger, to realize that you don't need to put your finger in the blender to find out the blender, to find out if the blade is sharp. That is not a high choice. That is not a high choice. Look at the blade. Look at the blade. You don't have to go out with the axe murderer. You don't have to go out with the axe murderer to find out the axe murderer, to find out if the axe is sharp. You can get another date. You can get another date who's not carrying an axe to the front door, who is not carrying an axe to the front door. You have choices all day long. You have choices all day long when you don't choose in fear. When you don't choose in fear, you will make the high choice. You will make the high choice to choose in fear. To choose in fear is always to choose in opposition. This is not discernment. This is not discernment. You may put your finger in the blender and not turn it on, and not turn it on and be perfectly fine, and be perfectly fine, period. And they're saying period. So I don't know what this means. What does it mean? I understand it this way. We can learn, the guides have said this, if we want to learn the futility of war by blowing ourselves up to kingdom come, we have that opportunity and we have that right. They don't see it happening, but we can learn that way. You know, I can learn. Here's a simple one. The guides have said again and again and again that there has never, ever been a lie told that was not told in fear, with fear at its basis. So simply not lying is already enormous, you know, and going into that agreement. If you look at, and the guides have said this, look at the last choice you made in fear and see what it got you. And more than likely, you'll see you've gotten more fear. The action of fear is to claim more fear. We can learn that way. We've been doing that for a very long time. So I understand that there's another option. Do I think everything is predestined? I actually don't, personally. I do think that there are markers in a lifetime and people that we probably encounter that are perhaps predetermined by the soul as part of our growth and learning. But, I think, there's a lot of ways to go from one place to the other. You can walk, you can take a boat, you can take a plane, you can bilocate if you know how to do that. I mean, there's lots of ways to do different things. And I don't think we're bound by one.
Thank you. How do we, the guides talk about often recognizing the divine in everyone or everything. How do we begin to do that?
Well, I mean, back to the old homespun stuff. This isn't the guides. Look for the good or the God in everyone. It's really that simple. And it's willingness to do that. It's the willingness to do that. The guides put it this way: who you put in darkness calls you to the darkness. Who and what you damn damns you back, and that's just vibrational accord. The guides have often said you can't lift the evil man to the upper room because you have made him evil. You have to go to the essence of the being, beyond the act or beyond your supposition of who they are, what they've done, to realize the inherent divine. You're not denying what they did. You're not playing, you're not whitewashing things and spraying perfume on something that smells bad, but you're realizing the innate source of the other human being, which is you. As you do to one, you do to all. I mean, that's an old teaching. It's a true teaching, but I think what it means has been moved into something far more convenient than it was intended to be, I am my brother's keeper as long as, as the conditions that we place on things. In 12-step literature, there's one line that blew my mind when I was 25. And it said, God is everything or God is nothing. What's our choice to be? Think about that one. And what we want is we want to cherry pick. And, I think we do that at a cost. And any religion who's damning other people, is operating, my guides would probably say, in a kind of heresy. You can't be the light and hold another in darkness. God, they say, it's the same light that shines in everyone. It may be operating at different levels and diminished by different experiences, and that's part of what we grow through, but you don't refute the light that must be there, because you do that at the cost of dimming your own.
I'm not sure how much you've turned on TV or the news or social media or anything. And on Maui, it's easier, it's more insulated. It's easier to not do that. But if you've caught any glimpses of anything in 2024, how do you balance that with the teachings and what you've learned?
I don't try to do that anymore, at times I go, oh, this is what this is about, or this is what they were talking about, and this is what we might learn from this. But what I try not to do is to be, first of all, I'm not a good New Ager, and I'm not somebody that says, don't watch the news.
Tell me more.
I don't watch the news, it will lower your vibration. I don't go there. I mean, granted, the news is coming from different sources that are all playing to different groups of people now, and it's not like it was, at least I thought when I was a kid, where there was Walter Cronkite just telling you what happened over the course of the day. That was it. There wasn't spin. There weren't talking heads telling you what you should feel or how outraged you should be. It was a different time, and there was outrage, and people were outraged. And I was a child when, people were protesting the Vietnam War and actively making a difference in the world.
One of my first memories is Nixon stepping on the helicopter.
See, I think I was in junior high school when that happened. So I was a little older. But I remember that too. And that was a confusing time to be alive. I mean, when I was a child, I remember watching the Black Panthers marching on Fifth Avenue with guns, and the Peace March down Broadway, and the Beans in Central Park, and people tripping out on drugs and running naked and hurting themselves by throwing themselves on rocks in Central Park. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy time. It was a fascinating time too. And it was a time of great upheaval and great change. And we are in one again, great upheaval and great change. And I think, sadly, we don't really learn from history well, and the guides have written a whole book about managing history, which is the Book of Innocence, which is reclaiming history beyond the old lens of separation. But how do you, let me ask and see if they want to take this on. How do we attend to what we see God where God has been lacking, see God where God has been lacking, where it has been denied or been refuted, claim the light where it appears to be gone, where it appears to be God, no God where God can only be, no God where God can only be, reclaim the light, stop expressing and exacerbating and polishing the darkness, because that is what you all like to do, you go into alignment with what you see. You're outraged if it does not mobilize you. If it does not mobilize you to good acts, beneficial acts is simply putting you on a high horse, making you right, and others wrong, lift another up, don't put them down, stop claiming, you are wiser, you're all learning in your own ways, period.
Thank you. Would you mind if I ask the guide what's the one teaching they want to get across to people today?
You see, only one thing. Stop denying your true nature. If you stop denying your true nature, you will stop denying the true nature in others, and you will know them as of yourself, and you will witness love. And we mean witness as in see and experience. When you see and experience love, you become as love, and you become a beacon, that will support the world, at a time when it's required. Renewal is here. It is not graceful, it is often forceful. It is often forceful, challenging, not peaceful, not peaceful. It will come, but it will come in its way, as you agree to it, as you agree to it. You have the right to be here. You have the right to be here at this time, in service of the whole, in service of the whole. Don't deny your brother or sister. Don't deny your brother or sister her right to be here as well. Her right to be here as well. Know her as of God, know her as of God, and you will be blessed. And you will be blessed in response to that, period. Interesting period.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What one teaching, either out of this book or out of the latest book, what one teaching has kind of blown your mind? And I struggle with that too. What one interview, Michael? I'm like, but is there one thing that's striking you that they're teaching right now?
Well, I mean, right now, and it doesn't sound like much, but it is. It simply is. And that the awareness and the shift of alignment that seems to come with that, when I'm not deciding what things mean or have meant or should mean or should be, it just is. I'm suddenly having an experience of the present moment beyond a kind of embellishment. It's like somebody just cleaned the lens off the camera, and it's surprising, and I'm still not used to it when I invoke it, but that's what's surprising me. And I just did the audio recording for A World Made New. A couple of weeks ago it finished. And it's the first time I actually read the book is when I sit down to do the recording of it. I don't read the transcripts as they come. I'll check the punctuation when somebody has a question or a word it's hard to hear. But there's no rewriting and there's no editing, so I prefer not to go back and revisit it because I'm going to live with it anyway. And when I did go through the whole book, I was kind of astonished at the elegance of it. And I thought, God, this is a beautiful teaching, and it makes sense. And the whole time they were delivering it, I was going, oh my God, this is too nuts. This doesn't make sense. It makes sense. They talk about how a world is reclaimed, the mechanics of it through higher consciousness, and how we are the ones doing it at a higher level, not through force of will, and not through getting our way or getting our politics the way we want them to be. It's just the knowing of source where it's been denied. It's the reclaiming of that. It's quite something. So I'm still sitting in that awareness, just having read the book myself.
And that really means then that, we can be prudent, we can go take signs to the street, but really if we shift and start living at the higher room, we're making the world anew.
Yeah, and if you're called to act from that place, you will. It's not about sitting on your hands necessarily. I mean, the guides have never said that. There's a fair amount of social action that they seem to support. But yeah, they say that is how a world is made new because, we're not going to fix it. All we know how to do is fix things at this level as best we can, and we're not succeeding very well. We're still operating from the same level of consciousness that the problem was claimed at. You've got to move to the higher for the solution. And I don't know that it's about a solution, it's about a renewal or a reseeing or a reclaiming of. I mean, they've said if the cement holding the building together, holding the bricks in place is steeped in fear, the building may not last. Other things get to be reseen and reknown. They say there's nothing wrong with a bank in principle, it's what's become of the bank. There's nothing wrong with forms of rulership or democracy or politics. There's nothing wrong with them necessarily. It's what we've done with them, and the same is true with religion. The truth of all religions, they say, is quite wonderful and the same, really, the essence of them, but what we've done with them is not so great. That's all.
Thank you. We're going to start to wind things down over the next little bit here, but one of the interesting things that they keep emphasizing is no one is left behind. No one is more favored than the next, and you all are loved.
I hear it still. They still say this. They don't stop it. The only times I hear what sounds like outrage from them, and I don't even think it's outrage. Sometimes I think it's a little performative. They're just stressing their point, is when they talk about how we treat one another and how poorly we act to one another. Because we have choice there. So, yeah, they always say there's no one higher than the next. And they've often said, like in your community, the most spiritually evolved person might be the school crossing guard. It's not the person wearing white and saying namaste necessarily. It's a way of expressing yourself. It's a kind of tribalism that we've supported. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it's a costume, really. As is everything else. There's a big wasp in my room now, and if it lands on my head, I'm going to fall backward in my chair, and that's how you're going to end your broadcast. Fireworks will go off again. Stung. Maybe you have a special effects for a wasp.
Well, I'm going to bring it full circle, and then maybe we need to, if you need to boogie early for wasp, I get it. Bringing it full circle, as we're talking about this world made anew, we're talking about the shift that we're going through. This comment of no one is left behind. We may all be going through at our own pace, it sounds like, but we are all going to get through this.
Eventually, yes, in our own way. And I do think that this is sort of under the jurisdiction of the soul. I think we're not, I don't think we will ourselves into enlightenment. I don't know that it happens that way. The guides say they bring us forward in the stages that we can manage. And that doesn't mean that some people don't awaken quickly to the wonder of themselves and whatever you want to call God. That's not been my experience. I'm a slow learner. The abilities that I have now evolved through this experience. I wouldn't have called myself a psychic. I had some experiences as a child, but those things didn't become commonplace until much later in my life. So, but I think, we get what we can manage and hold, and we have to be willing. The willingness is really key.
Where can people go? I'm feeling the wasp in there and sending the wasp love. Where can we go, Paul, to find out more, to find your work, to find your retreats, to find what's coming up in Maui as well?
Yeah, everything is up on my website, which is just my name, paulselig.com, and we keep an active calendar. I do weekly live streams most Wednesdays, and I do an online intensive. They're 2-hour sessions for 5 days, once a month, and those are pretty intense teachings, and there's lots of time for people to ask questions about their lives or about the guides' teachings. But yeah, and there's big events coming up still. There's one on Maui in the spring. There's one in Costa Rica in the fall. I just finished a round, and I'm not avoiding you. I'm just watching the wasp, which is now there. So I'm pulling back the killer ending of this. So that's the place as he gets ready to bolt out of his chair.
I'll ask, and as you bolt, what's the one last thing that's exciting you most at this time, other than the wasp that's staring at you?
I'm throwing a birthday party for my friend who's turning 79. Sure, I'm excited about that. That makes me very happy that I can do that. Nothing. Right now, I'm just okay. I'm pleased to be. That's all.
Thank you so much, Paul. This is so beautiful. I want you to boogie. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for everyone out there, and the wasp included.
I gotta go. I'll see you later.
Ciao. This is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, avoid the wasp, stay in the place of love, don't judge or it'll judge you back, and run, and shine bright.
Woohoo!
Bye-bye. Lots of love, Paul. Bye.
You too.
Oh my God, what a sweet interview. What a beautiful interview. What an interview really from the upper room. On that note, if you want to learn how to get to the upper room, if you want to play with a group of like-minded souls who are going to the upper room as well, come join us with the School of Mystics. I've got the link down below. We meet 4 Wednesdays each month and help bring your energy, your vibration, your attunement up, and way up. That's that link down below. If you simply want a vibrational attunement, a shift in the vibrational frequency of yourself each and every day, come to dailywoohoo.com. That's daily, WOOHOO.com. And I'm happy to help bring your energy up each and every day. And what do we have last? Well, if you want to learn how to channel your own guides, come on over to automaticwriting.com. That's the link down below as well, automaticwriting.com. Here's a link to the next amazing show. Huge thumbs up if you like this. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube shares it, and the more people can get this word. And I send all my love your way. Woo-hoo! How does it get any better than this? Lots of love, everyone.